Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and I'm going to be sharing with you loving kindness meditation. I'm going to be teaching you what loving kindness meditation is and how to do it. And then by the end of our class today, we'll actually be doing a loving kindness meditation session together. So I'd like to welcome all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly, or maybe you're watching this on the replay, welcome. This particular class is the first part of a 4-part series where you're going to be learning and building up your loving kindness meditation. This is going to help you to eliminate anger, hatred, ill will, and all those lesser versions like frustration, irritation, annoyance. By the time you get to enlightenment, where your mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, you don't even have the slightest dislike for another person. But that's very challenging to experience when there's pollution of the mind. When the mind is having craving, anger, and what we refer to as ignorance or the unknowing of true reality, the mind doesn't have the ability to have loving kindness for all beings. So this meditation is going to transform your mind, essentially rewire your mind to be able to then be loving and kind to all beings around you. So I'm going to start by sharing some teachings with you that are related to learning loving kindness meditation and helping you to understand all the different types of meditations that the Buddha taught, because he taught 4 different types of meditations. And ultimately, you're going to need to learn 2 of these meditations. The other 2 are there for specialized situations, and you may need those at different times. But the first 2 you're going to absolutely need. So that's why I started the group learning program with a 4-part series on breathing mindfulness meditation to get us started. And then now we're starting this 4-part series on loving kindness meditation. What breathing mindfulness meditation is for is to eliminate the craving, desire, attachment. This is the longing and the yearning. This is what's actually causing the mind to experience discontentedness. So breathing mindfulness meditation is there to help you eliminate that unwholesome quality of the mind. And then you're cultivating the wholesome qualities of mindfulness and concentration, where you're gaining awareness of the mind and the ability to practice singleness of mind or have focus, clarity, and concentration. This is important for you to build up about 4 to 6 weeks of breathing mindfulness meditation, and then you start bringing in loving kindness meditation to be able to address the other issue that's in the mind, which is anger, hatred, and ill will. This is part of what we refer to as the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots. So breathing mindfulness meditation is addressing one of those. Loving kindness meditation is addressing the anger, hatred, ill will, and all those lesser versions. So as you're doing this meditation, it'll essentially help you to uproot this unwholesome quality out of the mind. And it's helping you to develop the wholesome quality of loving kindness for all beings. What loving kindness is loving kindness is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. This is active goodwill. And you need to practice this without judgment. Sometimes what you might have been taught is don't respect others until they respect you, or don't be polite to others until they're polite with you first. Well, if everybody was practicing this, nobody would be respecting anybody, because everybody would be holding back and waiting for others to respect each other before they would respect you. So as an enlightened being, you need to break through that and be able to see how unwise that is, and not to conform to what other people are doing around you. But instead, you need to rise above this and realize that in order for you to experience love and kindness in your life, you're going to need to practice loving kindness. So by you putting out loving kindness, this is what will come back to you. By you putting out respect, this is what will come back to you. By you being polite to others, this is what will come back to you. But if you're holding back with your judgment and trying to determine whether someone deserves your loving kindness or not, and you're only going to practice loving kindness when they practice loving kindness with you, then your practice isn't liberated from attachment. That means your mind is still craving, you're still expecting other people to do something, and you're not going to do that thing until somebody else does it first. So as an enlightened being, you need to rise above that conformity and that lack of wisdom and realize that you need to cultivate this loving kindness in your mind and then practice it, whether other people are practicing loving kindness or not. An enlightened being doesn't base their practice on what other people are choosing to do. An enlightened being is going to be able to be loving and kind and compassionate and warm and polite and respectful, no matter what people are doing around them. Their mind doesn't function where it's contingent upon what other people do before they actually do something. Instead, an enlightened being is going to be able to break through all that and not have judgment where they're trying to determine whether someone deserves their loving kindness or not, but instead they're just going to be loving and kind with everybody, because an enlightened being would understand whatever they put out is going to come back to you. And it's much better when you have loving kindness coming back to you. But right now, depending on what you've been doing in your life, if you've been angry or bitter or harsh or hostile or aggressive, you might notice that that's what's coming back to you in some of your relationships. So for you to transform your relationships and build more harmony in your relationships, you're going to need to transform your mind to be more loving and kind, getting rid of the anger, hatred, and ill will and all those lesser versions. And then as you're practicing loving kindness more and more over time, this is what will come back to you. But you need to be able to practice loving kindness without the expectation that other people will be loving and kind with you. That's not what you're interested in either, because that's still an expectation. That's still a craving, a desire, an attachment. But instead, by you being loving and kind, then you'll experience loving kindness coming back to you. What loving kindness is it's this antidote or the wholesome root or the remedy for anger, hatred, and ill will, and all those lesser versions, like I mentioned, that by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even have the slightest dislike for another being. It's impossible for an enlightened mind to experience anger or experience dislike towards another being. So while other people may dislike you or other people may hate you, by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't experience any anger or hatred towards others. It's physically impossible for the enlightened mind to experience that. It will help you to eliminate harshness, bitterness, hostility, and resentment from the mind. It's one of what we refer to as the Brahma Viharas. The Brahma Viharas are something that I'm going to teach in chapter 14. This is later on in the book and later on in the program, where you're going to be able to learn about these 4 healthy mental states and cultivating these 4 healthy mental states. And these 4 healthy mental states are something that's going to help you to transform the mind and be able to then practice in such a way that you can antidote certain symptoms that you experience in the mind. So when we get to chapter 14, I'm going to teach you the Brahma Viharas, and this is one of those Brahma Viharas. In terms of the Eightfold Path, which is what I've already taught in this group learning program, and we're going to be revisiting that again in the future, the Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha. And as I've mentioned, all the different teachings plug into the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path being the core central teaching, you're going to notice various teachings plugging into that. So loving kindness meditation is something that plugs into the Eightfold Path. And here I'm using some of the words of the Buddha to help you see where loving kindness plugs in. So if you remember back to right intention or right thinking or right thought, the Buddha provides 3 aspects of the mind that need to be cultivated in order to practice right intention. And remember, the Eightfold Path is the path to enlightenment. So he teaches the intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, and the intention of harmlessness. Well, the intention of non-ill will, this is a double negative. So the intention of non-ill will is the same thing as saying the intention of goodwill. So if you're practicing the intention of goodwill, that's loving kindness. And what the intention is the intention is the thinking or the thought. You need to have this active goodwill towards all beings, because that's what you're building the rest of your practice on. Because if you continue to have hatred or anger or ill will towards others, then you're going to do harmful things to others, and now this harm is going to come back to you. So if you're interested in transforming your mind and transforming your life, you're going to need to have the intention of goodwill or the intention of loving kindness. But how would you be able to have the intention or the thinking or the thought of loving kindness if you didn't have a tool or technique to be able to support that and produce that in the mind? So the Buddha is providing you this teaching of loving kindness meditation as a tool or a technique to be able to integrate into your life practice and now cultivate this goodwill so that now you can practice right intention, where you have the intention of non-ill will, as well as the intention of harmlessness. Because if you have loving kindness in your mind, where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, you can easily then practice the intention of non-ill will or goodwill, and you can practice the intention of harmlessness. So the loving kindness meditation is going to help you essentially transform your mind or rewire your mind so you can have the intention or the thinking or the thought of goodwill and harmlessness. And then if you remember back to the 5 factors of well-spoken speech that I talked about as part of the Eightfold Path, he provides you these 5 aspects of speech that you can independently verify and see that if you speak in this way, it's going to produce wholesome results in your life. That if you speak at the right time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. And I gave you the details on all of those, and they're in the book. They're on the recordings of the videos and the podcast. But that one factor of number 5 is it is spoken with a mind of loving kindness. The opposite of this is if you are speaking with a mind of inner hate, it's going to produce unwholesome results for you in your life. But if you speak with a mind of loving kindness, which is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, this is what's going to produce wholesome results in your life, along with all the other factors. You need to be practicing all the factors. But again, how could you speak with a mind of loving kindness if you didn't have a tool or a technique to be able to help you cultivate that in the mind so that then you could practice loving kindness through your speech? And then even though I only have right intention and right speech here, you could even look at things like right action. Even right action, where he teaches to eliminate killing and stealing and sexual misconduct, there needs to be a certain amount of hatred and anger and ill will towards others in order to kill, to steal, or have sexual misconduct. So this loving kindness meditation is going to help you with your right action. And the same thing is true with right livelihood. The Buddha teaches you to eliminate weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons from any kind of occupation that you might practice, because those are causing harm to others, and then that harm will come back to you. So practicing loving kindness meditation will help you to be able to develop right intention, right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And now, having practiced this wise teachings, you will see through the natural law of karma that you will experience wholesome results. Whereas if you're causing harm through your intentions, your speech, your action, or your livelihood, then you're going to experience unwholesome results coming back to you because of the natural law of karma. Here's another teaching from the Buddha, where prior to this, he's talking to his students and he's explaining to them that it would be wise to speak with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, speaking at the right time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. But then he's also reminding them prior to this teaching that other people are going to speak to you in an untimely way. They're going to speak to you falsehoods. They're going to speak to you in harsh ways. They're going to speak to you in unbeneficial ways. And they're going to speak to you in a way that has inner hate. And he says, okay, when they speak to you in this way, even though you're learning the 5 factors of well-spoken speech and you're working to practice those, when other people are practicing the opposite of that, this is what the Buddha says. He says, herein, monks, you should train yourselves thus. Our minds will remain unaffected, and we shall utter no evil words. We shall reside compassionate for their welfare, with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. We shall reside enveloping that person with a mind filled with loving kindness. And starting with him, we shall reside enveloping the all-encompassing world with a mind filled with loving kindness, abundant, joyful, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. That is how you should train, monks. So here he's saying that when other people are speaking to you in an untimely way, falsehoods, harshly, unbeneficially, and with a mind of inner hate, your mind should remain unaffected and utter no evil words towards them, but instead reside with compassion, which is concern for their misfortune, and reside with a mind with loving kindness, without inner hate. But again, how would you be able to ever reside with loving kindness towards others when they are being bitter and harsh and hostile with you if you haven't cultivated the mind with loving kindness? So the loving kindness meditation is to build up the loving kindness in the mind so it's permeating in the mind. It's almost like filling up your gas tank. And then you go out into the world, and now this loving kindness is permeating through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. Here's some more teachings from the Buddha around loving kindness meditation. Here he's talking to his son, Rahula. Sometimes people think that the Buddha left his family and then he never came back, but this isn't actually true. He went off for 6 years. He trained his mind. He completely transformed his mind. He discovered the teachings that it took in order to lead to enlightenment and get to this enlightened mental state. But then he started teaching people in the local community. And his son, his wife, his stepmother, since his mother died when he was 7 days old, his stepmother ordains with him, his brother-in-laws and cousins, and all these different people started ordaining with him. So here he's talking to his son, Rahula. He's saying, develop meditation on loving kindness. For when you develop meditation on loving kindness, any ill will be abandoned. So this is the way a Buddhist speaks. They speak very clear, very concise, very precise. You don't have to interpret their words. You don't have to figure out what it is that they're saying. They're just going to give it to you straight, because he's explaining to you what did he do in order to transform his mind. Because at one time in his life, he experienced anger. He experienced frustration and annoyment and dislike towards others, because every being that's ever been born has been unenlightened. So beings experience this. But by the time he got to enlightenment, he had eradicated all the anger, hatred, and ill will out of his mind and all those lesser versions. So he's explaining to his son and his other students how he actually accomplished this. He accomplished this through loving kindness meditation. And here you can see that he's teaching his son, like, hey, you should do loving kindness meditation, because this is what's going to eliminate your anger, hatred, and ill will. Then here, this next one, he just says, loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. Again, very clear, very concise, and very precise. So not only do you need to develop loving kindness meditation, but you're going to need to go out in the world and practice loving kindness in your relationships through your intention, speech, and actions. If you were only meditating and that was it, then you're not going to have a full transformation of the mind. So yes, you need to meditate, and that's what is the catalyst that catapults you towards cultivating and permeating your mind with loving kindness. But then you're going to need to go out in the world and practice loving kindness through your intention, speech, and actions, using the Eightfold Path as a guide. And here the Buddha is explaining that loving kindness should be developed in the mind to abandon ill will. And this is practicing through your intention, speech, and actions, as you saw in the Eightfold Path. Then here's another teaching from the Buddha, where prior to this, he was talking to his students. And let me give you a little bit of background so that you'll understand what he's sharing here, that during the lifetime of a Buddha isn't the only one who's teaching. There's other people that are teaching too. So when the Buddha was teaching, he was teaching his teachings and helping people understand what it took for him to get to enlightenment. But there were other teachers in the community who were teaching also. And those people were claiming that it was their teachings that led to enlightenment. But he knew it was his teachings, so he just kept sharing his teachings. And now, 2,500 years later, we still understand the Buddha's teachings because they actually work, and that's why they're still around. But all those other teachers that were teaching during his lifetime that were claiming that they had attained enlightenment, we don't know anything about their teachings very much, because those teachings didn't work to get to enlightenment, so they've fallen by the wayside. But those other teachers, they would have various students that were learning from them, and the Buddha would have various students learning from him. And then these students would oftentimes get together. So the various students from the various teachers would get together and talk, because they would go out into the community and they would collect up food so that they could eat as donations. And now they would get together like in a park, and they would sit down and they would be eating. And then the various students would be talking about what it is that their teacher taught them. Even today, this kind of thing goes on, where maybe my students would get together with other students from another teacher, and they would be kind of comparing notes and talking and discussing. So the Buddha here is talking to his students about when you get together with these other students, suppose they ask, but what, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise and arisen anger is abandoned? You should answer, the liberation of the mind by loving kindness. For one who attends carefully to the liberation of the mind by loving kindness, unarisen anger does not arise, and arisen anger is abandoned. This, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise, and arisen anger is abandoned. So what he's saying is this unarisen anger in the mind does not arise when you're practicing loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness in daily life. What unarisen anger is like right now when you're listening to me, I suspect that you're not angry, that you don't have any anger in your mind at this particular moment. It hasn't risen up in your mind. But there's this mental object or this fetter or taint or pollution of ill will in your mind. We talked about this on Sunday related to the 10 fetters or the pollutions or taints or defilements. It's like a mental object. It's a deeply rooted container in the mind that is called ill will. This is anger, hatred, ill will. And it's only a matter of time for you that in some situation where your cravings get triggered, you'll either get pleasant feelings or you'll get painful feelings. And it's possible for this anger to arise up into the mind. Well, this is unarisen anger, that you have this deeply rooted container called ill will that's in the mind. And part of what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is to uproot this out of the mind so that you can then purify the mind and you'll no longer experience anger. So when you uproot that mental object of ill will out of the mind, you will never experience anger ever again. So the Buddha is saying, what's the reason why this unarisen anger, this mental object of anger in your mind, does not arise? And any anger that is in your mind, what's the way to abandon that and get rid of that? Well, he's sharing with you it's loving kindness that does that. So essentially what loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness is doing, it's almost like a jackhammering this mental object, this deeply rooted container, breaking it up in the mind and uprooting it and getting it out of the mind. You're transforming your mind. You're rewiring the mind. You're purifying the mind so that you'll no longer experience this anger, hatred, and ill will. So it's loving kindness meditation that's helping you to uproot that mental object or that unarisen anger, that fetter, that taint or pollution. It's helping you to uproot that and get that out of the mind. But also, anytime your mind is angry, what the Buddha is saying is in order to abandon that, bring in the loving kindness. So bring in the loving kindness meditation. Bring in your loving kindness in your daily life through your intention, speech, and actions. And that's what's going to abandon the anger. So the last thing you're interested in doing is allowing the mind to continue to dwell in the anger. If the anger has arisen and you just allow that anger to sit there in the mind is just continuing to fire with this anger and it's continuing to have anger. But if you can break that up and not allow the mind to do that, so if you can catch it with your mindfulness or awareness of mind really early, then you can break that up and not allow the mind to experience that anger. And more, you're going to rewire the mind where the mind doesn't experience anger. So you're going to need your mindfulness to be aware of any arising anger and then cut that off and let it go. And then in the meantime, be proactively training the mind with loving kindness meditation so that you can gradually wear away this anger, hatred, and ill will. The Buddha provides an analogy to help you understand what you're doing with all these fetters and when you're wearing them away. And it applies here with anger, hatred, and ill will too. That he talks about this story about a person who's digging with a digging tool, and there's this wooden handle. And as you're digging with this wooden handle, each day you're wearing away wood off of the handle. And you don't know how much wood you're wearing away from the handle of this digging tool. But when this handle is completely exhausted and you need to replace the handle, you're going to know that. You're not going to know each day how much wood you're wearing away, but when it's completely exhausted and it's time to replace it, you're going to know that. Well, the same thing is true when you're practicing loving kindness meditation and you're practicing loving kindness in your day-to-day life. You're wearing away your anger, hatred, and ill will every single day. You're not going to know how much anger, hatred, and ill will you're wearing away each individual day, but when it's completely gone from your mind, you're going to know that. Because it'll be 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You haven't been angry or irritated or annoyed or frustrated with anybody at all. And you'll know that it's been completely worn away. But each day, you're not going to know how much of this you're wearing away. And that's where you need to have the confidence in the teachings of the Buddha, in your own ability to attain enlightenment. You need to eliminate any doubt and realize that each day you're gradually wearing this away. But you're not going to know how much. So you're going to need to be dedicated, determined, and diligent in your practice that you're gradually meditating each individual day. What you're going to hear me share, or what you may have heard me share already when we talked about breathing mindfulness meditation, is that I recommend that you practice 2 to 3 meditation sessions per day, and you gradually build up to that. And 30 minutes or more per session, that's what you gradually build up to. Again, it takes 6 months, a year, even 2 years for people to build up to that. Well, if you're building up to 2 or 3 meditation sessions per day, you would like at least one of them to be loving kindness meditation. And oftentimes the morning session is really good to be loving kindness meditation, because then you go out into the world with loving kindness permeating in your mind. And now when you're interacting with other beings, you'll be able to be more loving and kind. It doesn't mean that you can't do loving kindness at night. You surely can. But oftentimes it's really nice to do it in the morning, because now when you go out in your day, you can be loving and kind. Well, your loving kindness meditation is going to be dynamic. It's going to be fluid. It's going to be flexible. When you hear me explain what loving kindness meditation is here in a moment, you'll see that you're going to be able to customize your loving kindness meditation. So as you're doing loving kindness meditation, not only do you customize the meditation itself, but you can customize when it is that you do loving kindness meditation. I suggest you do it in the morning. This is really wise. But again, you could do it midday or evening as well. And I also suggest that you do at least one session per day of loving kindness meditation. But that doesn't mean you can't do more than one meditation of loving kindness per day. If you're noticing that your mind is generally agitated or annoyed or frustrated, and you're noticing that persisting over multiple days, you might decide to do 2 or 3 loving kindness meditation per day. And this is as part of your overall practice. Because what you're going to see that when we do loving kindness meditation, we do a little bit of breathing mindfulness first, then we do some loving kindness, then we go back to breathing mindfulness meditation. So if you're doing 2 or 3 sessions per day, then you're getting a little bit of breathing mindfulness meditation in there, and you're doing your loving kindness too. So if you need to knock down this arisen anger that the Buddha is talking about and abandon that, there's no reason why you couldn't do 2 or 3 loving kindness meditations in a particular period of time. And maybe you need that for a week or 2 or 3, but then you ultimately go back to one session of loving kindness meditation once your anger has dissipated from the mind. So you're going to need to be thinking and be aware of your mind and make the wise decisions in the present moment of what type of meditation that you would like to do at any given time. Maybe you've done your loving kindness in the morning, and maybe all throughout your day everything's been fine, and you're planning to do breathing mindfulness meditation tonight at, say, 8 p.m. Well, maybe at 6 p.m. you got a phone call. In that phone call, you notice that there was some anger that arose in your mind at 6 p.m. when you were on that phone call. So even though you were intending to do breathing mindfulness meditation at 8 p.m., maybe instead, in the moment, you realize the wise decision would be to do loving kindness meditation instead, because you're interested in getting rid of that anger. So that might be what you need to do. So you're going to need to have this higher consciousness where you make a decision in the present moment that's going to be helpful and beneficial for you. This practice of getting to enlightenment, it's not plug and play. It's not black and white. It's not always do it this way and never do it this way. It's understanding what this meditation is doing for you. And then when you notice with your mindfulness any anger, hatred, ill will, frustration, agitation, annoyance, or dislike in your mind, that then you bring in this loving kindness meditation to be able to help you in that situation. This is where oftentimes the Buddha gets the reputation of being like a doctor, that there's certain symptoms that are in your mind, and then there's a certain prescription that's being applied. So even though the Buddha is being described as a doctor, you can be your own best doctor. That with your mindfulness, if you see the symptoms of anger, hatred, ill will, frustration, agitation, annoyance, or dislike in your mind, you see those symptoms with your mindfulness or awareness of mind, and you know the antidote now. The antidote to any of those things is loving kindness. And now you have a tool or a technique or a prescription of loving kindness meditation that you can bring in, and now you can use that to be able to rewire the mind and not allow the mind to dwell in that anger. Because as long as the mind's dwelling in that anger, it's going to keep firing with that anger over and over and over and over and over and over again. But you would like to break that up and not allow the mind to do that. So it's loving kindness meditation that's going to help you to be able to accomplish that. So next, I'm going to teach you what loving kindness meditation is and how to actually do it. But before I do that, I would like to just pause and see if there's any questions from anybody on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom about what I've shared so far about loving kindness or loving kindness meditation before I actually teach you the technique of how to actually do this. If you would like to ask questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comments section. I'll be able to see that. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. All right, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do then is now I'm going to teach you how to do loving kindness meditation. So far, if you've been doing breathing mindfulness meditation with me, you already know how we do that, which is we start with chanting, then we go into the breathing mindfulness meditation where you're focused on the breath. And when your mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go, and you bring the mind back to the breath. And you're doing this throughout the meditation. And then we come out of that with some more chanting. Well, now what we're going to do is we're going to insert loving kindness meditation, which is doing these affirmations where you're essentially rewiring the mind. So we're going to still do chanting to ease into the meditation. And remember, there's nothing mystical or magical with these chants. It's not rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship or prayer. It's just to help ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself, where you have awareness of mind and awareness of the breath. In 4 weeks from now, I'm going to teach a 4-part series on the chanting so you can learn how to do that. So we're going to start with the chanting. Then I'm going to guide you in breathing mindfulness meditation for whatever period of time. It usually takes me about 5 minutes or so to guide you. And then there's going to be kind of like another 3 to 5 minutes where we're actually doing breathing mindfulness meditation quietly, just like we normally do. But then I'm going to come in with loving kindness meditation, and it's going to be these affirmations. Then after that, we're going to go back to the breathing mindfulness meditation for about 5 minutes or so. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with the chanting. So it's kind of like a loving kindness sandwich, with the loving kindness being in the middle. The lettuce and tomato on the outer edges, that's the breathing mindfulness meditation. Then the chanting is like the bread that holds it all together, right? So this is what we're going to be doing. Well, when we get to that part where we're doing loving kindness meditation, I'm going to be doing affirmations, and I'm going to be doing those out loud. You're going to hear me saying things like, may I be peaceful. And when you hear that in your own mind, quietly, on your out breath, you would like to repeat that. May I be peaceful. Then I'm going to take a nice deep breath. Then on the out breath, I'm going to say, may I be safe. And then once again, on your out breath, wherever you get to it, in your own mind, you quietly say, may I be safe. And then I'm going to say, may I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. Because in order to have loving kindness for others, you need to have loving kindness for this being, who you are. So you're cultivating loving kindness for yourself. Then we're going to make these expansive rings where we're going to get wider and wider and wider. We're probably going to do about 6 rings where I'm going to be using these different rings, like may my parents be peaceful. May my family, friends, and neighbors or coworkers, and things like this. And I'm going to be using affirmations that apply to all of us because I'm guiding you in meditation. If I was doing this quietly on my own, I wouldn't do it out loud. I would just do it quietly in my own mind, which is what you're going to need to do. And you're going to need to customize this meditation. Ultimately, you're going to get to the last affirmation where it's all beings, because you're not interested in leaving anybody out. But in the middle there, you would like to customize it. Between I and all beings, you would like to customize this on your own when you're doing it on your own. You would like to include a couple of people that you have loving kindness for. So you make a couple of rings. It might be your parents, it might be your siblings. You might name people. May Bob be peaceful. These might be people that you already have loving kindness for. Then you'll go to maybe like a ring or two of people you're more neutral about. Maybe like coworkers or neighbors. You don't hate them, but you don't love them either, right? They're just kind of like more neutral, and you're looking to cultivate some more loving kindness towards them. But then you would like to include a ring or two of people that you do have hatred for, that you do have anger towards. Maybe you have resentment towards them. They may be currently in your life, or they may be long gone. They may no longer even be in your life. They may even actually be dead, but your mind is still holding on to anger. As long as your mind's holding on to any anger or hatred towards any beings whatsoever, it's not going to be liberated. You're still going to have this mental object of ill will in your mind. You would like to uproot this and eliminate it from the mind. So you're not hurting anyone else other than yourself by holding on to the anger, the hatred, and the resentment. It's only hurting yourself. Sometimes we hold on to those feelings because we think it's hurting the other person. It's getting back at them. If we hold on to our anger and resentment, we're somehow getting back at the other person. But this is like trying to burn somebody else by holding a hot coal in your hand. You're holding a hot coal and you're trying to burn somebody else, but in reality, it's just burning yourself. So this anger and resentment and hostility in your own mind, it's just hurting your own mind. So you need to uproot this. Whether you ever see these other people again, doesn't matter. As long as you have anger and hatred in your mind, the mind's not liberated. So this meditation, you would like to include yourself first, then move to a couple of rings of people that you do have loving kindness for, move to a ring or two of people that you're more neutral about, and then move to a ring or two of people who you do have anger and hatred towards, and that maybe you have some bitterness and hostility built up. But then ultimately you would like to get to all beings in your meditation. And then eventually we'll go back to breathing mindfulness meditation and come out with chanting. As I mentioned, what you're essentially doing here is you're rewiring the mind. Where right now in the unenlightened state, when somebody does something you disagree with, if you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, they do something you disagree with, you might notice anger, hatred, and ill will arising in your mind. And the mind goes down this well-worn path of anger, hatred, and ill will. It's like you've got the bushes pushed back, the grass is worn out. The mind keeps going down this path of anger, hatred, and ill will. And you know where this path leads, that it leads to broken relationships and difficulties and arguments. And now what you're choosing to do is no longer go down that path. I'm not interested in going down that path anymore. Your mind will still go down there because that's the path that it knows and it's well worn. But now what you're doing is you're forging a new path. You're getting out your machete and you're cutting through the bushes of this new path. And you're making your way through this new path. And it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a struggle because maybe you've built a wall between you and these other people. And you'd like to get out your machete and break through these bushes. And now you're forging this new path. And as you do, it will be challenging. And sometimes you won't even feel the loving kindness. And that's the whole reason why you're doing it, is because the mind doesn't actually feel it. It doesn't actually have that mental quality of loving kindness. But as you go down this new path and you forge this new path with your machete more and more, this old path will get overgrown. And as this old path gets overgrown, the mind doesn't even look down that path anymore. It can't go down that path of anger because you've created this new path. So now when somebody does something that you disagree with, without craving in your mind, you won't get angry. You'll just go down this path of loving kindness because you understand that it's not possible for you to agree with every single person in the world. You can love the person while disagreeing with their choices and decisions. You might disagree with someone's intention, speech, and actions, but that doesn't mean you can't love them, because love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Love isn't, I will agree with everything you do. Sometimes that's what people think love is that I will agree with everything you do, so therefore I will love you. But that's not actual love. What you can get to is you can get to the point where you see the person and the choices and decisions they make as two separate things. And you can disagree with someone's choices and decisions while still loving the person. And loving the person means that you have a genuine interest in seeing them be well. So even somebody who murders another person or someone who rapes another person, I can still love that person. I can disagree with the choices that they make, and those are unwise choices, and they're going to experience the results of those decisions. But I can still love them as a person because I have a genuine interest in seeing them be well. This person who's murdered or raped, sure, they may need to go to jail. They may need to get some rehab. They might need to get some help, get some transformational training in their life. Sure, they might need to do all that stuff if that's what they choose to do. But I can love that person where I have a genuine interest in seeing them be well while still disagreeing with the choices and decisions that they make, because I'm not going to agree with everybody's choices and decisions. There's 8 billion people in the world. And if your love is contingent upon you can only love somebody if you agree with what they do, then that means you can only love one person in the world, because there's only one person that you're ever going to agree with 100% of the time, and that's yourself. But if you can get to the point where you see the person and the decisions that they make as separate, then you can disagree with their choices and decisions while still loving the person. So this loving kindness meditation will help you to be able to cultivate and permeate loving kindness in your mind and bring it up to the forefront of your mind so that now you can go out into the world and be more loving and kind. But as you're first doing this, you're not going to feel it potentially, particularly with people who you've been holding on to this anger and hatred for a really long time. But slowly but surely, you gradually wear this away. Just like that wooden handle on the tool, you gradually wear away this anger, hatred, and ill will, and ultimately more and more loving kindness will come through. And eventually you'll get to the point where you won't be angered or hateful or vindictive in any of your relationships whatsoever. But it just takes gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, both in meditation and outside of meditation as well. So I'm going to do loving kindness meditation with you. But before we do, I would like to just pause again to see if there's any questions that you guys have. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So let me know if you guys have any questions. Okay, so it looks like we have some questions coming in here on Zoom. It says, I have a lot of regrets of past actions or objects, like the house that got away. Does loving kindness meditation or breathing mindfulness meditation help with that? My mind wrongly believes that getting the perfect house, or if only I didn't say or act a certain way, that I wouldn't have conflicts, etc. Okay, let me answer that first before I go on to the rest of your question here. What's happening there is that there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind. This is the mental longing and strong eagerness, the mind wanting things to be a certain way. If I just get that house, everything will be perfect in my life, right? This is the mind thinking something external is going to provide lasting satisfaction. But even if you get that house, you'll be happy for a period of time, but then your happiness is going to fade because you've based your inner feeling on the house, and that house is a conditional object. It arises, it changes, and it fades away. You might be happy for a month or 2 or 3, but ultimately your happiness is going to fade away. So the mind needs to do breathing mindfulness meditation and practice generosity to bring down and eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. And you need to learn the Four Noble Truths. If you haven't learned that with me yet, you're going to need to learn that, which I teach it in chapter 4 of this group learning program, which is coming up in about 4 weeks. Or you can go back to some of the recordings where I've recently taught the Four Noble Truths, and you can learn about how your mind is causing these discontent feelings based on its cravings, desires, attachments, and its breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity that's going to gradually wear that away. It's not like you're going to do these meditations once and then you're instantly going to eliminate those feelings that you have, but slowly but surely, you'll start to realize that all these cravings, it's just the mind longing and yearning, and it's not going to get lasting satisfaction from something external. So breathing mindfulness meditation will help you with that, and so will generosity. If there's any anger in the mind or any negative self-talk in your own mind, loving kindness meditation is really helpful for that. Where if there's any diminishing or degrading thoughts in your own mind, or you're beating yourself up about these things, that's where loving kindness meditation comes in. So any kind of things that you have in the past, you need to realize that those are in the past, that you've made those decisions, you've moved on from those things, and continuing to cling to the decisions or the lack of decisions that you made, that's in the past. All you can do is right now in the present moment, make wise decisions in the present moment, and realizing that nothing external is going to provide lasting satisfaction. So while you may have a goal or an aspiration for an improved career, you might have a goal or aspiration for a new house, you might have a goal or aspiration for a husband or children or a wife or a partner or something like this, you can gradually work towards those things. But it's when the mind's craving it and longing and yearning for it, desiring it, wanting it, that you can only be happy when you get it. That's what craving, desire, attachment is. And then when you don't get it, you get angry or sad or frustrated. But even if you do get the object of your affection, that happiness that you experience is only temporary. And it's only a matter of time before the mind's longing, yearning, and chasing after something else. So by training your mind with breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity, this is what will slowly help you to learn how to pursue things as a goal, as an objective, as an interest, or an aspiration, something that you're working towards gradually rather than chasing after it. But also, if you were on the other side where you were indifferent and you could care less about your career, or you could care less about what shelter that you're in and whether or not it provides you warmth and comfort, you wouldn't be peaceful and joyful there either. So on either side where you're chasing after it or you have indifference, you're not going to be peaceful and joyful. So coming to the middle where you're gradually working towards something as a goal, objective, or interest, that's where the mind can be peaceful. Here's some more from the same person. Also, my in-laws do a lot of rituals. I don't believe in every 2 weeks and want me to participate. Since I don't believe in it, I feel forced and resentful whenever they ask me to pray, or now whenever I hear them call or even text. I have clinging to be able to practice what I want to. Would you just try to do loving kindness and refrain from they just mean well? Do I have to participate in their rituals if I do not want to out of loving kindness for their happiness? Thank you, Teacher David. Yes, so what's happening here is your in-laws have craving, desire, attachment. what they're choosing to do, they think that everybody should do that, and they want everybody in the world to do that. And yes, in their mind, they think they're doing the wise thing, because in their mind, they believe that if you don't do this, something bad's going to happen to you. But they don't understand that they're having craving, desire, attachment. And when they try to force people to do things, people are resistant and reluctant to do those things. This is how you know when people are doing those kinds of things, they're not practicing the truth. They're not practicing the true way that's going to lead to peace and joy, because their happiness is contingent upon other people doing what they do. And this is craving, desire, attachment. So you can just choose not to do those things. You don't have to be involved in that. And when they're trying to get you to do those things, you can just smile and say, okay, if that's something you would like to do, feel free to do that. Or you don't have to say anything at all. You can just smile. Whatever they choose to do is up to them. That's their choice and that's their life practice. But you don't have to do what other people are doing. In fact, in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to rise above what other people are doing, because the vast majority of the world is unenlightened. And they're doing things that are unwise. Not only rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, but people are killing and stealing and having sexual misconduct. They're lying. They're taking substances that cause heedlessness and all these other things. And if you just conform to what other people do, you're going to be stuck in the darkness with them. So a person who's going to make their way to enlightenment, they're not a follower, right? They're not going to follow other people. They're not going to conform to other people. They're not even following me. They're not conforming to me. They're looking at what's being taught and they're investigating and examining that. They're reflecting on that to independently verify it. And then they're practicing it to be able to see the truth for themselves. So in this situation where people are attempting to force you to do what they want you to do, that's their expectations, their wants. And you need to be able to see it for what it is, which is their expectations and their wants, and don't adopt it as being yours. You're not doing anything wrong or unwise by choosing not to do what they're doing. In fact, in my opinion, you're doing something very wise, because if you were to do rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, this will be your mind having that misunderstanding or that confusion, thinking that somehow that's going to lead to beneficial results. And if you adopt other people's expectations, whether it's about rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship or anything else, you're just following that person without putting real thought into your life practice yourself. So if somebody was stealing, or if somebody was breaking a window of a car or stealing a car, if you didn't put any thought into what it was that they're doing and they're asking you to do, you wouldn't be practicing wisely. So whether it's rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, and people truly mean well when they're trying to convince you to do those things, you need to be able to see the truth that this is unwise to allow your mind to go in that direction, because it's not producing any beneficial results for you. And if other people get angry and mad and upset because you're not doing what they're doing, then you can have the confidence to know that they're causing their own anger. They're causing their own unhappiness. They don't see it that way because they don't understand the Four Noble Truths. They don't understand craving, desire, attachment. In their mind, they're experiencing painful feelings because you're not choosing to pray. And they think the way to solve their problem is to get you to pray. But even if you started praying, and they were happy for a period of time, it's only a matter of time before the next expectation comes in. And if you give the indication that, hey, when you put your expectations on me, I'm going to do what you want me to do, well, they'll be happy for a week or two or three when you're praying. But then it's going to be the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And they're going to keep stacking expectations on top of you. Them putting their expectations on you and trying to control you and force you to do things their way, it's not going to solve their unhappiness. But they don't realize that because of their lack of wisdom. They think the way to solve their painful feelings is to put their expectations on you, control you, and get you to do things their way. And they think that's going to solve their problem. But they are perceiving their problem as being external, that you not praying is their problem. But what their problem is inside their own mind, that they're having craving, desire, attachment, longing, and yearning. And it's not just for you to pray. It's other things that they're having craving, desire, attachments for too. And they're unhappy in those situations. And it's not actually solving their problem by getting you to pray. The real problem is in their mind, the craving, desire, attachment, and eliminating that is what's going to eliminate their unhappiness. But they don't have the wisdom to be able to see that because they haven't studied the path to enlightenment to be able to understand that. They think that their goal in life is to go out and teach other people and force other people to do things. But this doesn't lead to happiness and peacefulness, but their mind just lacks the wisdom to understand that. So you do what you think is wise and what you know to be wise. You don't have any obligation to do what other people are attempting to force you or control you to do. In fact, the more that people force you and try to push you to do things, I would advise you to do just the opposite. Because the more that you conform to what other people are expecting you to do, it's only a matter of time before the next expectation, the next expectation, and the next expectation comes in. I learned this very early in life. When I was quite young, I was about 17, 18 years old. I was hanging out a lot with my guy friends. And my family was like, why are you always hanging out with your guy friends? Why don't you get a girlfriend? You need to get a girlfriend. Stop hanging out with your guy friends so much. So after a few months of thinking about it, I was like, all right, well, I'll get a girlfriend. So I went out and got a girlfriend. All right. I was hanging out with my girlfriend. Well, then after a couple of months, they're like, why are you hanging out with your girlfriend so much? You shouldn't be hanging out with your girlfriend so much. You should be hanging out with these people and that people. And I was like, oh my goodness, you can't make these people happy, right? So you can learn that you can't make other people happy. Their happiness has to come from within. But the unfortunate thing is that with the lack of wisdom, people think that their happiness is going to come externally. So my family was putting their expectations on me of who they thought I should be hanging out with. And when I wasn't doing what they wanted, they kept trying to force me to do something different. So after doing that for a couple of months, I said, you know what? I'm not going to do anything that my family wants me to do. I'm going to do what I know to be wise. And I'm not going to try to conform to other people's expectations. And from that point forward, my mind just became happier and happier and happier. My life became better and better and better because I was no longer trying to fulfill other people's expectations. I was doing what I know to be wise for myself. So that's what you're going to need to do in your own life, is that when people are putting their expectations on you, just realize that you can't make them happy. You're never going to fulfill your in-laws' expectations or your parents or your life partner. All these people's expectations, that's their expectations, and they're unhappy because of those expectations, but they just can't see it because they don't know the truth about how their mind is functioning. But if you know the truth, you do what is wise for you, and then just let them be unhappy because they're choosing to do that themselves. And as you become more and more peaceful and more joyful, and they're going to be like, what is she doing? Why is she so peaceful? We're over here being so angry, but she's so peaceful. Why? And they might ask you, why are you so peaceful? And then you can share it with them. Hey, it's these teachings right here. And then maybe they might decide to learn a little bit, but it needs to be their choice. And you're not going to force that on them. But you just do what is wise for you. As you become more and more peaceful, people will take notice and they might start asking you why. And that's when you can share it with them. Okay, great questions there. Let's see if we have any others coming in anywhere else. Okay, let's see. I don't see any other questions anywhere else. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch over to doing loving kindness meditation with you. If you would like to take a position, either seated, lying, or standing, these are the 3 positions we use for loving kindness meditation. We don't use the walking meditation. So I'm going to do the chanting. I'm going to then do a little bit of breathing mindfulness. There's going to be a period of time where it's quiet. Then I'm going to come back in with the loving kindness, and I'm going to do affirmations, not these exact ones here. This is just a learning aid. I'm going to do other affirmations that are applicable to all of us. Then we're going to go back to the breathing mindfulness, and we're going to come out with the chanting. So if you'd like to take a position, either seated, lying, or standing, I've provided guidance in the past about how to do that. And then if you'd like to chant along, if you know these chants, you're welcome to. And then afterwards, I'll come back in with some guidance on breathing mindfulness and loving kindness meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanhang Abhivateyami Savakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang namami. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vicacaranang sammuno sakhato rokavito anutero purisa Dhammasati satadawa manusanang Oto bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Then I'll be back with more guidance on loving kindness meditation. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these affirmations in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. May mom and dad be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. May my family and friends be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. May all those who have harmed me be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. May all those who I have harmed be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be safe. May all beings be well. May all beings be free of discontentedness in the suffering it causes. Now go back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato คะสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสตาตาวามนุสนังโอโตภะคะวะเต Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, what I will share with you guys here at the end before I open up to any final questions that you guys might have is that it's important to keep in mind that with loving kindness meditation, you are not meditating in order to change other people. This isn't a prayer or anything like that where you're trying to change somebody else through something that you're doing. It's actually not possible for you to fix somebody else through your meditation. Anytime you're meditating, it's to eliminate your unwholesome qualities of mind and cultivate your wholesome qualities in your mind. You're not actually changing someone else. So sometimes when people hear these affirmations of, may mom and dad be peaceful, they think it's almost like a prayer, and then somebody's going to kind of intervene on your behalf. Gautama Buddha, he lived, he's died, he's never coming back to this world ever again. He's not here to intervene on your behalf. That's not what he's doing whatsoever. He shared his teachings of how to get to this enlightened mental state, and now you can learn those and you can experience the enlightened mental state yourself. But the Buddha nor any other being is intervening on your behalf and making your wishes come true. That's not what this is. This isn't a wish that mom and dad will be peaceful. What this is transforming your mind to be more loving and kind and having this genuine interest in seeing mom and dad and your family and friends and people who have harmed you and people that you have harmed and all beings. That's your mind cultivating the loving kindness, the genuine interest in seeing them be well. But understanding all the while them being well is based on their decisions. It's not based on your decisions. It's based on what they choose to do. So you can't make somebody else well. They have to choose to do that for themselves. But you can transform your mind to be more loving and kind so that now when you're around them, you being more loving and kind through your intention, speech, and actions, that's what you'll experience more in the relationship. So when I was growing up, I had a lot of hostility and resentment towards my mom for certain things that happened as I was growing up. And even into my early adulthood, I had a certain amount of resentment and hostility towards my mom. When we got together, it was only a matter of time before fireworks went off because of this hostility that I had. And also on her side too, she was quite angry and hostile towards me as well. So when I started training my mind, I started transforming my mind to be more loving and kind. And I used to do, may I be peaceful, safe, well, and free of discontentness. I would do that 2 or 3 times because I had a lot of negative self-talk in the mind, kind of diminishing talk, degrading talk. So I would do rings for myself 1, 2, 3 times. And then I would do mom, 1, 2, 3 times. Then I would go to all beings. Slowly but surely, over about a 6-month period, I got to a point where I was being more loving and kind with my mom, and I started transforming my intention, speech, and actions when I was around her. And this actually transformed our relationship, that by the time she died in 2017, we had a very loving relationship. There was no hostility or bitterness between us whatsoever. But that took me doing the work. All through my life, I always wanted my mom to change. I really wanted her to change. And I thought if she changed, then I would change, right? But that's not the way any of this works. The way that this path works is you've got to change first. You've got to do the work. So her and our relationship was like a log jam. There was all this anger and resentment and hostility jamming up our relationship. And I needed to pull out the log of anger. I needed to pull out the log of resentment. And then as I started pulling out all these logs, then the relationship flowed more readily. Oftentimes in the unenlightened state, we really want the other person to change. But what this path is all about is about you doing the work. The Buddha put you as the central focus in his teachings, because by you training your mind, that's where you'll experience real results in your life. So his teachings are helping you to understand what's causing these problems, and then he's giving you the tools and techniques of how to fix them. So by me transforming my mind, and then in our relationship, I became more loving and kind. That's what transformed our relationship. And you can experience that same transformation in your life too, in the various relationships that you have. But it's going to take time for you to gradually train your mind and focus on doing that inner work. So in some cases, you might need to put relationships on pause. I needed to do this with my mom several times, where I put our relationship on pause, not telling her, but just within my own mind. I just knew like, okay, I'm not going to contact my mom. I'm not going to go see her. Sometimes I would do that for upwards of 3 years sometimes, where I wouldn't go see her. And I would be doing this work on my own mind. And then when I would spend time with her, then I could be more loving and kind. So there's certain relationships in your life right now that you're going to need to let go of and move on from, because these relationships are really hostile. They're very bitter. They're really harsh. You're not committed to the relationship. The other person isn't committed, and you're going to need to let those relationships go, and you're going to need to move on. And that's how you're going to clean up your life in those particular situations. But then there's other relationships that you're more committed to, and maybe they're problematic right now. But by you doing some work, then you can get to a point where slowly but surely you can work out these relationships. I did that with my mom. I did that with my sister. I did that with my wife. I was committed to these relationships, and I just needed to do the work on my own mind first. But then there's a third category of relationships, of new people that you haven't even met yet. You don't even know who they are. You don't know their names. But by you training your mind and being more loving and kind, when you make those new relationships, you'll only ever be loving and kind in those relationships. And that's what will come back to you. So these three categories of relationships is there's some relationships you're going to need to let go of, and that's your way of cleaning up your relationships. There's others that you're going to need to pause perhaps and do your own work within your own mind. And then when you're ready, perhaps you start the relationship over, but you don't necessarily have to tell the person that's what you're doing. Then there's going to be new relationships that you don't even know who those people are yet. You'll only ever be loving and kind because you're practicing these teachings. And now that's all you'll ever experience coming back in those relationships. And as a matter of doing this, you'll slowly but surely transform your mind, transform your life, transform your relationships, and you'll see that there'll be consistent improvement. But remember that you always need to start with your own mind, because oftentimes we think that everyone else needs to change, but you need to improve your own mind first. And coming to these classes, reading the books, doing the meditations, that's what you're doing to transform your own mind. So let me know if you guys have any questions on anything that I've been sharing today. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I'm just seeing a bunch of Ys in YouTube and people saying some nice things. And I don't see anything else anywhere else. So what I'm going to do then is end our class here by just thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for watching the replay. Thank you for attending live. Thank you for being interested in learning and practicing these teachings, because it's helping you. It's helping those close to you as you're becoming more loving and kind, that you're doing less harmful things. And it's helping all of humanity become a more peaceful and loving place. Next week in Wednesday's class, I'm going to be doing the second part of this 4-part series, where I'm going to be helping you to build up your loving kindness meditation practice. And then on Sundays, we're going to be doing loving kindness meditation together now as well. This Sunday, we're going to be in chapter 1 of this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. If you haven't gotten this book yet, you can download it from our website for free. You can take it and go print that. You can get printed versions on Amazon if you'd like, or you can get them here at the temple in Chiang Mai by just reimbursing us for our printing costs. You're going to need to be able to read this book, so you might read it before class and or after class, because there's some things in the books that is not in the classes, and there's some things in the classes that aren't in the book. So having a version of this book will really help you to be able to gradually learn and gradually develop your practice. And as you're learning, I suggest you just read like maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes a day. And remember, you're not believing anything that you read. You're learning, you're reflecting, and you're practicing to be able to train your mind and cultivate this wisdom so that you know the truth. So perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.